volleyball by appearing the beach volleyball. This is my comment, I'm sorry. Bobby Clarke, and for ESPN Disney, Mike Millay. Please.
Thank you, Cornel. And now in this second round of discussions, we thought we would try to complement the first panel, which you just heard this morning, where you heard from like big sports, big leagues, sports that have been popular for 50, 60 years, and how they have maintained to stay popular and to keep developing what they are doing. And I think one of my key learning points from the first session was that even though you hear from the biggest leagues in the world and some of the most popular sports, still it's not easy. They have to work hard every day. They have to keep innovating. They have to keep coming up with new ideas constantly. And these are the biggest leagues. So everybody else had to work maybe even harder. We then thought in the second session here, we would look not at what the big leagues are doing, maybe the biggest sports, but how some relatively new sports have managed within a short time to break through and maybe, as Cornel said, maybe even save the main version of one of the sports. We look into sports like rugby and maybe the version of rugby which is called Rugby 7, which you might know now has become Olympic. Beach volleyball, which became Olympic in 1996. And then we will hear from Walt Disney World Sports Development Director, Mike, about how Walt Disney, that you all know the brand, you all know Mickey Mouse, etc., how they use some of their service concepts to actually develop sport and to implement some of this thinking into developing sports in the Walt Disney resorts and provide new way of thinking which we could all learn from. We will have 3 presentations, and then we will turn to discussions and to hopefully a lot of questions. And as I mentioned just before, we have now opened this Twitter account which you can follow, and we'll be taking questions from you guys here and from your water polo colleagues around the world via the Twitter feed. But we will start with rugby, with US Rugby. Nigel Neville is the CEO of US Rugby. You might think that if people play tough sport in US, they play American football, but the really tough guys, they play rugby. And we will hear some of the background for the success of rugby in US, a new sport in US, that more than doubled its membership from 50,000 to more than 100,000 within a short time. So we look forward to hearing from you, Nigel. The floor is yours.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to share the next 2 days with you, not only from a rugby perspective, but a sporting perspective, because I understand the question we had earlier. How can we compete with these big sports? We haven't got all your money. We can't do what you do. We haven't got all your fans. We haven't been around for all these many years. But I think it's worth a try, don't you? When I got my job here at USA Rugby, I accepted a job on a Friday night. And on the Saturday, I went to my first international game. And then I really regretted having taken the job. We were in a big stadium. We had 500 fans, and to get in, you had to bring a can of beans for charity. So immediately, I was on the back foot and very concerned. So what I did was, I thought, well, we've got to start big. And this isn't a very good start. It's not a very big start. So first of all, I heard a word earlier about love. And it's interesting, the reason a lot of you are here is because you love water polo. You love your aquatic sports. You love it. And when I came over here, people said to me, so what's your mission? What are you doing? Why are you here? And a number of people had asked me, and I always said, I'm here to inspire Americans to fall in love with rugby. And it was fantastic. That was my elevator pitch for the first 4 years. And the questions came back, was always the rugby here? Do you get paid for that? What else do you do for a job? And all those kind of things. So first of all, I thought, well, we've got to show people what it is we're trying to achieve. And videos are so important. So my first message to you, video content is absolutely critical if you want to sell the sport to an American audience or to a development audience.
Ever dreamed of playing a sport that combines the very best of every sport you've ever played? Ever dreamed there was a sport where the thunder and lightning goes on non-stop, with the ferocity of hockey, the high jumps of basketball, the precision slides of baseball, the power and speed of football, the inventiveness and artistry of soccer? A game that's daring, tough, and challenging. A game that stretches beyond the field, beyond rivalries, beyond borders. Rugby, the game played in heaven and made for America. A nation that inspires and embraces the very best of everything. And we got everything to make this dream happen right here. The talent, the passion, the teamwork, the individuality, the diversity. So let's just put it all together and go for it. Because one day when our dream becomes reality, the USA Eagles will compete in the Rugby World Cup against the New Zealand All Blacks and win. In the meantime, it's all about the ball and rugby.
So I think the first message to you as well is to have a dream, and have that dream and live it every day. And if you're feeling bad, put on the video and just remind yourself why you're there and why you're doing what you do. When I looked at the demographics of USA Rugby, it was another telltale sign for me of why they hadn't grown over the last 40 years. And the reason being that they were pretty strong in the amateur club side. It was a very amateur game running into the elite game. The Eagles team was pretty good, the national team, but below that, the high school and the youth programs were virtually non-existent. And that, to me, if you look at that diamond, you know, it might just fall over. You need to have a foundation for the sport in the USA, particularly in order to grow and develop. And I think our guest in the last panel, you know, intimated how important the youth game is to developing sport. So what we did was we listened to our people, and we listened to people. You're doing that this week, so I commend you, because very few organizations do this. Listen to what people actually want. And it wasn't that they didn't want rugby in America, it was that they didn't understand the structure of rugby. They wanted our sport to look like an American sport. They wanted state high school competitions. They wanted state rugby organizations. They also wanted us to look like the big sports and develop in the same way as the big sports. And that was crucial for many reasons, but the main reason being that we had to engage with the mums and the dads, because mums and dads are the ones that sign up the kids to go and play sport. They're the ones that drive them around. They're the ones that fund it. They're the ones that are the team mum. They drive youth sports in America. So we introduced something called Rookie Rugby. Now, I don't know if you're a rugby mind, anybody. You've probably played touch and pass rugby around the world. But touch and pass, touch is not a good word in America, particularly with youth and with schools. So we created Rookie Rugby. It's exactly the same, but it's branded for the American market. And it was all about fun, family, non-contact, picking up the ball and running with it. Simple as that. It was branded for the Americans. It built a foundation for the players. 6 to 12 years of age was our key market 6 years ago. Create a new generation of players, a new image. We had an image problem. It was a badly behaved college campus drinking sport. And so we wanted to change that. So we'll start with the youth and change the picture. promote a healthy lifestyle, talk about community, re-establish the family quality time, mums and dads playing with their kids, boys and girls playing together. We created the Rugby Mums and Dads because soccer has mums and dads. And then we promoted the global game. So we built from the bottom up. That was the only way forward for the sport that had been floundering for 40 years in America with no foundation. Our demographic now looks a little bit like that. A really strong rugby programs across the country. We have 38 state-based rugby organizations, and they feed up into our high school programs, our high school national championships, our state championships. We have 38 of those, and we also play 7s and 15s rugby. We have 900 college programs now, all built on the back of enthusiasm and passion and a commitment to the youth. So it's really important because that didn't cost lots of money. It just took a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of passionate people. So then we looked at our product and said, could we make it easier to understand? Because the Americans weren't quite getting the scrums and the line-outs and the rucks and the mauls and the slow pace of the game and the stopping and the starting. They wanted something a little bit more rapid. And around the world, the game of rugby sevens was starting to develop. Now, rugby sevens has always been in our locker. We've been playing rugby sevens around the world for years and years and years. Usually we played it when we hadn't got 10 players or 15 players to play anything else. So you'd just play sevens. It was a social game. It was something that we did in the summer. It was something that the backs played, but the big forwards didn't play. It was just something. And only a few years ago, it was just tournaments around the country, pick-up games, people enjoying themselves. But suddenly, it sort of got a following. And it got a following because it suddenly attracted some great athletes. And our international players wanted to play it. It gave them freedom to express themselves and for us to develop a game. And it was all based predominantly around the Hong Kong Sevens, which became a sort of a diamond for us in the rough where everybody went once a year to play. Sevens rugby is same size field, size of a soccer field, 7 minutes each way. It's high scoring. It's really easy to understand. American TV love it because they can put commercials at the front of it, commercials at the end of it, commercials in the middle of it. Fans love it because after 14 minutes, American fans are pretty tired of watching the sport. They have to go and get a drink. They have to go and eat. They have to do things. Then they come back and watch another game. So it fits the American psyche, and it's very, very important. Easy to coach, easy to play. And the interesting thing for us is it was always with us. We always had it. This huge opportunity was before us, and we never did anything about it. And hopefully, during this weekend, you can recognize what you've got in your locker that you can bring forward. You've probably been doing it for years, that you could do now and take the game forward from the youth and build programs. Then what we did was we decided it would be great to put sevens in the Olympics. It's a 2-day tournament. It fits perfectly. Our spirit goes with Olympism, hand in hand. So we created a movement. And this, again, is how we use the video to show the global and the youth and the international perspective of rugby, not only to Americans, but to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Our passion, you can see this in the video, these are digital content pieces we use, and we use digital media. Digital media is very inexpensive. Digital media is a connection with people, with individuals, with your market, with fans, with sponsors, and you can really do good things with it. In USA Rugby, just a year ago, that was our digital presence. 12 months later, that's our digital presence now. We have platforms at every level. We have digital staff working all the time on our content. It's so important to engage. As I'm speaking now, they're tweeting this from our USA Rugby office. It's getting out there talking about sport, about development. It's actually about passion, not money. Because if you let money be the problem, you're probably going to sit around for a long time waiting for something to happen. And when I got here, I had no choice. And so the key drivers to our progress have been basically listening to what people wanted by creating a youth movement with an American-based product. Rugby Sevens then entered the Olympics, and obviously digital media is keeping us connected. Our broadcast is starting to come, our sponsors are starting to come, and we still have a very, very long way to go. But I think it's a message to you that I know how it feels to be sat in an office where nobody knows what the word rugby means. And I know some of you have got this around the world. But you can't give up the fight, because you can make things better and you can do things to drive you forward and become mainstream as a sport. So I commend you for doing what you're doing this week. I commend you for your passion for your sport, because it's actually about the love of the sport that counts, not necessarily money and all those kinds of things. I just want to share with you our last game for the USA Sevens, played against the All Blacks Maori in Philadelphia. Obviously going back to my first game with 500 people, this is 5 years on what can be achieved, and the audio of here is actually from the terraces. And we're at the PPL Park in Philadelphia with 18,500 sellout crowd, and this was the response from our passionate rugby fans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nigel. Really interesting. And as you said, it's possible with love and hard work. And I think one of the things we will touch on in this panel is this also a way for water polo to look into a alternative version or a separate version like rugby 7, and now we will hear from volleyball or beach volleyball. As I said, beach volleyball started in the Olympic Games in 1996 in Atlanta, and Bob Clarke was in the middle of it. He was also in the middle of it in the London Olympic Games. So if anyone can tell us something about that, it's you, Bob. Floor is yours.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I love sharing ideas from other sports because it only helps ourselves grow and continue in sport to present a great product for our customers. You know, the Olympics, getting beach volleyball in the Olympics in itself was a story. Back in the early 80s, there was a professional tour going on in the United States. It was called the AVP. In Brazil, they were starting also to have beach volleyball events in Copacabana, Ipanema beaches. the International Federation, the national federations weren't paying any attention to what we were doing in beach volleyball. They were only focused on their main discipline, indoor volleyball. It was a very well-established sport. The technical officials were very hard to get to change rules in the sport. So finally, after we had a friendly match between the United States and Brazil in 1987 in Ipanema. There was 10,000 spectators in that stadium. It was one of the most spectacular things we've seen in the sport. Back in the US, we were having large spectators also, about 10,000 spectators in some of our domestic tour events, and the AVP was growing. Then our leadership in the FIVB decided this looks like something we want to do. Beach volleyball was being played around the world in different formats. We had doubles, we had 3-person in France, we had 4-person in the US and other places in the world, and we thought we wanted to get this game in the Olympics. How do we do that? We were also told by the leadership of the IOC at the time, you just can't change the surface or go outside. The game has to be different. So we tried to get the direct opposite of what indoor volleyball was, so we reduced it down to a pair, and we played outdoor on the beach. The environment was really fit this X Games type of mentality and would bring us a new audience, not necessarily the same audience that we had in indoor volleyball. So I'll show you here a brief video. This kind of gives the ambience of our sport. So the thing that we heard earlier that was a common thread through all the sports, spectators need to have fun. It has to be a fun event. We have that in beach volleyball with the entertainment. In the Olympic Games in the first edition in '96, we just engaged the crowd with, all we had was a sport announcer and music. And we were thought of as being a little bit radical then when we had people doing the wave, the YMCA song and all this, but for the Olympics at that time, that was a pretty unique experience for them. And so we were just kind of pushing the envelope. We create the festive environment at all of our events, especially the Grand Slams, which is the top level, and then also at the Olympic Games. We want an environment that's enjoyed by spectators. We try to also provide opportunities for spectators to even try the sport. And our athletes are very available to spectators. Locations, we try to be in iconic locations. 2012, which was the opening venue there, that was probably the most iconic location of the games for us to date. And we've tried to do that at all of our events, whether they're the Grand Slams or whether we try to be in city centers or in great locations, beach locations that will serve us well. Here's the Olympic qualification for beach volleyball. And there's a reason I want to show this. It's in the past, up until 2012, or before 2012, we only had the World Championship, the World Tour events, which was the top level events, which included maybe have 50 countries involved in the sport or in the qualification process, which is the 2 years prior to the games. So this World Tour would be going on for 2 years. It was the qualification process, plus it was an income earning opportunity for the athletes. But it only served about 50 national federations. Starting for 2012, we introduced the Continental Cup and Continental Cup finals. So we were guaranteeing one team from each of the continents. And what it did, which was bigger than all of this, was it caused an increase of about 152% in number of national federations participating in the sport of volleyball. Bringing it down to the local level and to those federations that don't have the resources that the big federations have was a key to growing our sport, having the number of national federations increase, and this has helped our development tremendously. This is the international properties, the Senior World Championships, the World Tour, the Grand Slams. You see there's prize money. Each Grand Slam will have 11 of them this year. It's between $800 and $1 million in prize money for each Grand Slam. The Opens, which is the lesser event, $75,000 prize money. And then the total prize money that the International Federation is putting out is about $10.2 million. It's important to note that the International Federation is contributing to these promoters in the prize money. The promoters are putting up maybe $200,000 of that prize money, the International Federation the rest. So the International Federation is constantly trying to help stimulate this tour. The downside of this tour is figuring out how to make money at it. With indoor volleyball, is where all the money comes from for our sport in our international federation through TV contracts. We haven't had that opportunity with beach volleyball. Youth and Junior World Championships. We have under 17, under 19, under 21, under 23. This is important for the development of the youth. Someplace they can go. We have events at the Continental Tour level, where the qualifiers for these things, and the Youth Olympic Game qualifiers. This is important because the Youth Olympic qualifiers were done through the Continental Confederations. And each of our Continental Confederations, there's 5 of them, they're broken up into zones, and each one of the zones was having a champion that would end up going and qualifying for these Youth Olympic Games. And that was tremendous growth because countries that would never have that opportunity were all of a sudden having an opportunity to compete internationally, and these teams became heroes in their small countries. Continental Cups, again, enabled less developed national federations to participate in Olympic qualification. Teams able to earn world ranking points to enter the World Tour Open, Grand Slams. And again, there's the increase, 152%. Number of national federations taking part in Olympic qualification. So it's important to go to the grassroots. It's important to engage those national federations that don't have the resources. We have to do that at the national level, we have to do that at the continental level, and then we go to the national level. And a typical national program would be beach national team, which goes to the Grand Slams. We have then A2, which goes to the Opens, elite development programs, and then junior beach national teams, which is more or less the youth and junior programs that feed into these international programs. The beach volleyball, what it's done for volleyball, it was very difficult to change the rules in volleyball. But with the advent of beach volleyball, the president used beach volleyball as the reason to change rules, to bring change to the indoor game. In '96, we were having side-out scoring. The games were 3.5 hours long, very hard to sit through. We needed to shorten that match for indoors down to about 2 hours, so we went to rally scoring, but that came from beach volleyball. With that being said, a lot of the rule changes were then imposed on indoors from beach, this other discipline, to the chagrin of many of the technical officials. But to this day, I think we have a better game indoors now because of this. So it's really one way to embrace a new discipline to help you with your other discipline. And that's helped us with beach volleyball. We'll have some questions here, I'm sure. But we're continuing to expand on beach volleyball, but the important part for us is to engage that audience. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. I think, and we will come back to questions from the floor and from the Twitter feed. I can see there's a lot of activity out there in the water polo communities around the world, so we will respect them and also take questions and have the answers from the panel being tweeted to this audience around the world. But I think some key words from Bob is like accessibility, making it easy to get into your sport without knowing that much about water polo, other than seeing it on television and being at some events. It could seem to be, it's a tough sport. It's difficult to maybe to get into it. What could we do to open up and make the access kind of easier? We'll get back to that. In Scandinavian, at least, we have an expression when we see a very poor team playing water polo or soccer, we say it's a Mickey Mouse team. Maybe we say that also elsewhere in the world. But I think after the next presentation, we have to change that, because we will now hear from Walt Disney World Sports Director of Sports Development, Mike Millay, how Disney, one of the world's, or maybe the world's leading entertainment company, is using its experience from entertainment to enhance and develop sports properties, and using the ideas of entertainment and service management from the Walt Disney Resort and having that implemented in the sports world and in sports competitions. Some of the major sports brands, leagues you just saw in the first panel are actually now being advised by Walt Disney. So I think we can look forward to some interesting insights. Mike, the floor is yours.
For all of us who have ever done presentations, you always dread when your presentation is not working. So I'm looking back here and I'm looking at some texts that are we set now? Not yet? You did give me more time. So what, from a show of hands, how many people have been to the Walt Disney World Resort before? So a handful. So the next question then is, how many of you have ever heard of ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex? Again, only a handful, which is the opportunity here. So I'm going to go backwards a few slides here. Maybe I'm not. So the Walt Disney World Resort, for those of you who have never been there, is a 29 square miles, 27,000 acres of land, 4 theme parks, 3 water parks, a downtown Disney entertainment district, and a place called ESPN Wide World of Sports Complex. It is the largest and busiest sports complex in the world, which I'm going to show you some pictures of, if I can get through this presentation. It represents almost 30 sports a year. 350,000 athletes a year go through our doors. So the reality is what you've heard from my 2 colleagues up here, as well as the first panel, which talked about professional sports and the spectator engagement and the entertaining side. Well, as an entertainment giant, we understand that in terms of meeting the consumers' issues and opportunities. What we've found that the opportunity in sports is at the youth level, and at the youth level, not necessarily at the elite youth level, but all the way down to the grassroots. For those of us that are trying to get athletes into our sport, that's a key opportunity. And what we've been able to achieve in our 17 years since we've been open is, again, we've hosted now over 3 million athletes, from 6-year-old to adult softball players. We have 9 venues there, and it's turned into an exceptional business opportunity for the Walt Disney World Resort. We own 25,000 hotel rooms at the Walt Disney World Resort. Again, the 4 theme parks, that is our business driver. So what we looked at when we decided to get into the sports business was to build a sports complex, 255 acres, 9 venues, no aquatic facility, I apologize, but we're working on that, to use that as the driver to bring them to the Walt Disney World Resort. Now, for those of you, again, that may not be familiar with it, we have 55 million people a year that come to Central Florida and to Walt Disney World. So that's a pretty nice opportunity here. And I'm looking here because I want to show a video. Are we getting there? Of course, this all worked right in our presentation ahead of time. You need me to go back there and help? Maybe? Be back in 1 minute?
I think while we are getting the technical requirements up and running, let me just have the first question from the Twitter feed, which is a good question. We all know the importance of star power. What if there are just no stars? What if there are just no stars in our sport? No star players in our country. How did you get started? You didn't have any stars in the beginning in USA Rugby, I could imagine.
We actually, in USA, in rugby, well, in rugby sevens, we're struggling to find stars at the moment because our 15-a-side game has all the stars. All the stars globally are generally in the 15-a-side game. I think people come to rugby sevens to just see the teams and the occasion and just get behind their countries. And I think an interesting will be 2012, the Paralympics. When my kids were in London, they couldn't get tickets for the main Olympics, so they bought tickets for the Paralympics. They just wanted to go and watch sport. They went to watch teams. They want to watch action. They want to see competition. I think that drives everything. It's great to have stars, helps put bums on seats for events, but essentially I think people go for the competition and see their country succeed.
Yeah, our federation has a heroes campaign that is running and actually tries to identify and create heroes for our sport. We also try to create heroes locally, so when we go to a local event, we can showcase their best player as part of this heroes campaign. So it's been working out pretty well for us.
Maybe while we are still struggling with the technology, I just would like to, because since you are sitting here, both of you, having this alternative, lighter version of your sport, I would see Rugby 7 as a lighter, easier, accessible, less costly, etc. version, and definitely the same with beach volleyball. Is this something that you've in the beginning, I could imagine that would have been viewed as a competition from the mainstream version of the sport. Is that something you were struggling with in the beginning, and then you realized actually it helps you? Bob?
Yeah, well, that was it was a struggle and also a fight with the established volleyball, because they felt that beach volleyball was taking funds from their sport, and therefore, was just taking from them without giving anything back. Whereas now the sport is starting to give back to indoor volleyball and creating more popularity for the sport as a total.
Yeah, I think Rugby Sevens was used as a development tool for 15s, and when we got into the Olympics and when the World Series became a much bigger event, it's gone alongside it now, and athletes are choosing 15s or 7s, so it's no longer a development pathway.
So I think you should warm up, because we will ask you the question, would it make sense for water polo to develop this lighter, easier accessible version of the sport to drive that version and the mainstream version? We'll get back to that. Now I think we are ready.
I think we're ready. Thank you. So the two brands that ESPN Wide World of Sports covers is, one, the events that take place at our physical complex. The second one is a line of business we now call Run Disney. We're now the second largest race producer in the United States. This past weekend, we had 24,000 runners running the Princess Half Marathon on Sunday, 10,000 runners run on a 10K on Saturday, and 10,000 runners run a 5K on Friday. So all total, we're at about 50,000, 55,000 runners in one weekend. So you can imagine the economic impact that drives to Central Florida and to the Walt Disney World Resort. So that's really the business we're in. We're in the business of sports tourism, but we've leveraged and we've partnered with a lot of the national governing bodies in the U.S. to take advantage of our location, our brand visibility, to help lift their sports up. And there's a suggestion that you might think about, not necessarily at Walt Disney World all the time, but other great destinations around the world. So I'm going to show you a little video real quick. So you saw the ages of those kids. The reality is this might be the pinnacle of their athletic career. Very few of them will ever be able to go on to college and play in the United States or go ahead and make an Olympic team or professional league. So what we've tried to do is take that same experience that we were talking about earlier in the first panel about the experience of the guest and the athlete. For all practical purposes, these athletes have made it to the big time. They've made it to ESPN, and we put them on TV. So last year we broadcast 600 hours of coverage out of Wide World of Sports, going on primarily on ESPN3 or Watch ESPN for those of you that are familiar with our mobile app. As I mentioned, 255 acres, 9 venues, which we listed there. We host about 170 events a year and 350,000 athletes a year, but more importantly, over 3 million athletes. So this has given us a unique perspective of where sports trends are happening. This shows you that growth all the way through here over the last, since we opened up in 1997. We are a full and complete event management company carrying all these different areas. So whether you want to come and just rent our facility, we allow that to happen, or if you want us to completely run our events. So we run 65 Disney created events, and those are certainly our most profitable events because we own every revenue stream, including the economic impact. But you've seen these pyramids before, and it's kind of interesting. As you look at the two different pyramids, the talent progression pyramid, the majority of people that are participating in sports, for the most part, are what? They're recreational, they're competitive. They're not the elite athletes that we always deal with. But every parent and every child aspires to get to that level. We try to make that dream come true at ESPN Wide World of Sports. What we're seeing also is in our diamond on the right-hand side is that's the reality of where the biggest participation is, between U8 and U15. And that's when every parent believes their child still has a chance to be a professional athlete. In America, 18% of high school athletes think they're going to play professionally, not play collegiately. They think they're going to still play professionally. So that aspirational dream, we want to try to give them an opportunity to experience it here. And so you really get the sense of what's going on in the thing here. What we've learned here over the few years here is very some eye-opening things. And I think that's not revolutionary for you. The over-specialization, though, of younger age athletes is causing a variety of problems. And all of us that are in the sports business, we want those kids to start specializing early. All the data is now beginning to come out and show that over-specialization is bad for them long-term when you get to our age. Without question, technology has interrupted the youth sports landscape. Think about when more kids are playing video games than actually out there participating, it leads to obesity. Technology has impacted event attendance. All the pro teams, all the large soccer stadiums are now trying to say, how is that experience better? Time appears to be less available for kids nowadays. And like our organization, more for-profit organizations are getting into traditionally not-for-profit spaces who run events. I think you need to embrace that rather than feel that as a threat. And I referenced several of our NGBs who have partnered with us, and their number one youth tournaments are at ESPN Wide World Sports, where we've jointly created a property. The opportunities, I said, sports tourism continues to grow rapidly. All of you bring your events to different destinations, and you're hoping that municipalities will open their arms to you. But the reality is all these municipalities are getting smarter about sports tourism, and they're looking at you to say, how many room nights are you driving for me? So it really is an economic formula. Athletes are traveling at younger ages. We actually have under 6 kids traveling from across the United States to see if they're the best under 6 team in America. Now, it's certainly no indication of success long term, but we're seeing that. We already talked about, in several of the panels, about modified games. I think you've got some modified games in your sport already with, I think it's called flipper ball at some of the ages to get kids in the pool, which is smart. I think one of the other things you need to think about is leveraging that sports, that entry in terms of safety for parents. So parents understand that going in the water is a safe opportunity. Maybe playing water polo is an easy integration into this. So one thing I'm going to talk about is differentiating your product. And this is something that we think we're world-class in. It is all about the experience. Everybody has talked about the experience and how do you take it to the next level. It's really not about the product, but it's the perceived quality of the experience that ultimately is most important. I'm going to talk a little about the Disney Institute, who's one of our lines of business that we focus on over-managing little trivial things. And that's the difference between good and great, whether it's in leadership or creating a culture. I would challenge all of you to look at your organizations and say, how do I redefine my culture? And it starts at the top. If you don't demonstrate it, it won't go down to the bottom ranks. And that's not just in your national organization, but that same opportunity needs to translate at an event level. So I'm going to talk to you real simple about our approach to quality service. So our consistent business results are driven by overmanaging certain things that most companies undermanage or ignore. And that's the key source of what differentiates us. Well, we've learned to be intentional where others look at it as unintentional. I'm going to go into one little area specifically. Look at this sentence right here. It's really very, very clear. Exceptional service is achievable for every organization because exceptional service is architected through systems and processes. I would challenge all of you to look at your processes. When we think about Walt Disney World, people say, how do you find all these friendly people? They all work at your parks. Everybody's always so happy. That is not because we've got a great recruiting system. It's because we've architected this with processes, places, and people. The first service story is understand that service drives differentiation. For all of you that are competing with other sports to get people into your sports, think about differentiation in a major way. When we talk about designing exceptional service, we talk about take the entire customer service from when they go online to your website to when they leave the stadium afterwards. Delivering exceptional service is one thing to design it, the next thing is to deliver it. So you've got, again, exceptional service is going to derive from process, place, and people. And then lastly here, recovering service. Most people don't think about guest recovery or customer recovery. How many of us have gone into a restaurant or gone into a shop and got bad service? How many people then took that service, took that experience, and told 5 other people? We all do it, and that's really where we want to focus here for just a second. As we looked at all of those 4 different areas, we start creating consumer and business insights. I took one insight out of 45 different business insights that I think is relevant to what we do here in sports. Many organizations, substandard service execution is rooted in fundamentally flawed thinking. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't have to do it through a show of hands, but think of a piece of paper here where you say customer service is a nice to have versus customer service is a business imperative. And I would tell you that the majority of people, probably in this room and outside here, say it's somewhere in the middle. For us, it's all the way over here. It is a business imperative. And what do I mean by that? Again, they're looking at discretionary costs versus an investment. Good customer service really doesn't cost you a lot of money. It takes focus and cultural shifts. The next one here, differentiation comes from delivery of service, not the promise of service. How many of us have looked at an advertisement only to be disappointed dramatically by the end results? So don't let advertising get too far ahead of you what you can consistently deliver. And that's very, very important. You're advertising saying, I've got a great experience. You better be able to deliver on that great experience because otherwise people will talk about it. Here is a very, very, very important pitfall in this insight. Seeing the person, not the issue. So great service only happens when you see a person and not just the issue. What does that mean? That means when we encounter an issue, let's say a person spilled their drink. They just bought a nice Coca-Cola and they walked away and they spilled it right away. Now, the average person, the average customer service person, if they're not empowered to fix that, let's say somebody bumped them, one of your guest service people actually bumped the person that knocked the Coke over. How do you deal with that? At Walt Disney World, all of our guest service people are empowered right away, go get a new Coke for that person. Or if you have an issue with a ticket, maybe somebody's sitting in the wrong seat, how do you deal with that? It's really about understanding that person's perspective, not the issue. And once you understand that, you will not have issues with your guests. And then the last one here, service is not a private affair. With social media today, what happens? Assume the quality of your service is going to go viral the very next moment. If you don't understand that, you don't understand social media. Social media will cripple your event or your organization if if you don't understand what great service means. So I bring this point up just to talk to you about, we've all talked about experience, but what does experience really mean? This kind of drills down into just one little insight out of 30 plus insights that we know can work for everybody. So this is a little example here. Any of you that haven't been to Walt Disney World, if you've been to any theme park around the world, this is what happens. The day begins, you walk by the sundries, the media, you make sure you get some snacks for the day. You go ahead and you visit the park, you spend an exhausting day there. You come back out, you make sure you get those souvenirs before you go home. It's a very strategically how we've done that. We've entered on one side, we bring them out on the other. This is an average family at the end of a Walt Disney World vacation, at least one day. And now, of course, what does the wife say? She says, honey, where did we park our white Ford car that we rented? So again, attention to detail, where did we park? By strategically understanding that we've got cast members who say one question, what time did you park? We know through our maps and through our tram operators, we know exactly where you parked your car. Not necessarily the exact slot, but in what area. What this does for a guest, it makes them know that we went over and above the call to do that. These are little examples that can happen in the pool, in your organization. You just got to think about over-managing what is normally not thought about. So lastly, make each and every guest feel special. You don't have the red carpet, you don't have a castle, but there is a way that you can make sure every one of your customers have a great experience and come back saying great things. That's it. I'm thinking we're done here. And you know, the big question here is, can you take service to another level? I think you can. You just got to challenge yourself and challenge your culture to do that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And a question for you, and you don't have to answer right now, you can think about it. Knowing what you know about water polo, and you saw some few videos, what would you recommend one thing that these guys should over-manage around the experience of the pool? But we'll get back to it. You can think about it, yeah. Any questions from your side? Yeah, right in the front. And we will not use the Mickey Mouse team expression anymore.
It's okay, we're used to it.
You're used to it as well?
Yeah.
Microphone is coming here, yeah. Just front row. Yeah.
Thank you very much for excellent presentations. My question is to the volleyball that is more close to us, I think, for water polo, because we have several concepts developed in some countries and some federations for the mini water polo or the beach water polo or something like that. It is for example, we have very successful implement this beach water polo in Asian Games, in beach Asian Games. As you know, this is very successful. Every games we have this tournament, and it's kind of something. In Asia we love it. But my question is to the beach volley. As we understood, it was created like additional sport to develop or to support main volleyball, right? No, it's just I'm not finished. And second thing, how many years does it take to be successful? Because as you said, first match was played in '87. That means over 30 years. But when it became successful, the beach volley, just to let us understand how long does it take. And another thing, third part of the question is, what is more popular by the TV audience and spectators? Women competition or men competition? Thank you.
Well, our experience in your last question, men's volleyball or women's volleyball, we find that on-site spectators, we have better results for men's volleyball. For television, we have better results for women's volleyball. Why that is, I'm not quite sure, but it might have to do with when it's aired on the, yeah. So the other question,
That's a good question because I don't know. We're still trying to figure out how to make money with beach volleyball. We go along, we're supported by the International Federation, which its primary income comes from indoor volleyball. So I guess for Olympic Games, we have tremendous success with beach volleyball. We also have tremendous success with indoor volleyball. So it depends on the markets being served. It's hard to say what success is. Through profit or through spectators. We have lots of spectators and we have lots of television, but we haven't figured out how to create a sustainable model yet for just beach volleyball on its own.
We have a question here. In the meantime, I take one from the tweet, maybe for rugby. Someone asks, can you build popularity of a sport without a strong professional league? In rugby, you have strong leagues in some countries, but you don't have strong leagues for rugby 7, do you have? So can you build like water polo without some strong professional leagues in key countries?
Yes, you can. It's helpful if you have something that people can aspire to in terms of a revenue opportunity like a job once they leave college, because particularly in America, when they come out of college, you either go professional or you go get a job. You don't go and play an amateur sport like rugby. You know, your sort of career's over. So having a professional league in America is going to help us a lot. We're going to move towards a semi-professional league where we will probably, a little bit like cricket was many years ago, where you would probably play through the season and get paid, because I don't think we can afford to pay full salaries. And then in Europe, they have the big leagues, and we lose our best players to Europe, and we will for some time before we can afford to compete with the wages. So it helps, definitely.
We have a question in the...
Here, I have another question, yes.
No, this comes first.
I'm sorry.
It's the rule. Ladies first, yeah?
Lady first. Always.
Still, go ahead. Over there. And then Cornell.
Hello. This question probably will go for the volleyball commentator. When you get, you all had managed to say that we should go to the grassroots of each sport so we can increase our members. In water polo and swimming and marathon swimming, usually you bring up your kid to the swimming school at 4 years old, and by the age of 8 or 9, your coach or your instructor says that your kid is good for swimming. But then on the way when he turns 12, the other coach says he's good for water polo. So you have both coaches arguing that water polo will do harm to the swimming technique, and probably you have the same situation with beach water polo, beach volleyball and indoor volleyball, that they may say that the sand may damage their knees, and the other one said that the hard court will. How do you deal with the coaches and they say, I don't know, creating a culture of collaboration, I think?
Bob?
Yeah, right now we have actually it's a problem in the U.S. It's not a problem, it's a good problem to have. We have clubs that were formed primarily for indoor volleyball, which is huge with the youth and junior. In fact, probably the USA Volleyball is supported by this side of indoor volleyball. It's the youth and junior clubs where we have tournaments with 1,400 teams showing up under one roof. And these clubs make a lot of money off these parents that have the kids there. And one of the complaints parents have to the indoor coaches and clubs, I'm paying all this money, but my child's not playing. They're sitting on the bench. What we're finding now, these clubs, because it's a revenue generator, these clubs now are starting to understand that these kids, a lot of kids want to play beach volleyball, and they're afraid to lose them. So there's a lot of influences in the clubs where they don't want to lose the athlete to beach volleyball, so they're creating programs within their clubs to support beach volleyball. the parents, now that the sport is becoming a scholarship sport in the United States, there's a whole new dynamic coming to this. So the parents paying the money for these children to play find out that in beach volleyball, there's no substitution, there's no bench, so their child is playing 100% of the time. So this is a dilemma that we're facing right now with volleyball. It's also at beach volleyball we're suffering in that we don't have so many facilities that can support these tournaments like indoor has, where I said 1,400 teams, and the team consists of 12 players. When we have a tournament, it's 4 players on a court, and there's only a few beaches and a few places in the country that we can have 100 courts set up at any one time. So we're facing a facility problem right now throughout the U.S., and how we solve that, I don't know, but we're working on that. Yeah.
The one thing I'd add is one of the areas that we're getting into at Wide World of Sports is we're getting into sports medicine, sports science, sports performance. I think the interesting opportunity with your specific question about coaches driving whether an athlete should play one sport or another, swimming or water polo, or whether it's rugby and American football. Parents and coaches need education. They need education. If you take a look at the statistics, it says by a child specializing in water polo at age 8, age 9, what is the correlation to them actually making it to the highest level? And I think you'd be shocked at the delta of those athletes that are specializing at an early age and whether they actually aspire to the level that they think they are and what those coaches are driven them to. So to me, this is about coaching education and parental education, that over-specialization at a young age in any sport is not healthy.
Thanks, excellent. We have question here and then down there. Lots of questions. Yeah, please go ahead.
Mike, you talked about not having an aquatic facility in your particular precinct, but you will be looking towards one. What was your motivation for not initially including an aquatic facility in this particular arena? Yeah,
here's the challenge that aquatics has, is the cost of construction, the cost of maintenance of these facilities. In America, for the most part, they're subsidized by either college tuition fees, student fees that are actually subsidizing that, or they're run by a YMCA in America, not-for-profit. We actually looked at this. If we had every one of USA Swimming's events in our facility, we couldn't pay for the facility. So for us, when we build facilities, whether it's a football stadium or a baseball stadium or an aquatic center, we have to look at, will that facility return an investment? Because if not, we'll just take that $20 million and go invest it in something else that actually will get a return investment. So that's a challenging piece here with aquatics. I think it's a necessity for long-term athletic development, but we have to look at it through the eyes of tourism, and we haven't found that value yet.
Thank you. Do we have the mic down there? And then
Yes.
This mic will go to the front row. Take the question from down there.
My name
Yep.
is Tibor Rueda, here from Mexico. Now, water polo versus swimming, for example, for the state or some federations that are more important than medals, is not a profit, the water polo, because you invest in one swimmer that bring you, I don't know, 10 medals, versus 15 players or 13 players plus coaches for one medal. So how we can encourage the state to help more or help give the facilities for water polo and improve water polo instead of another sports?
I'll make an attempt at it. I think
the question is how we encourage the state.
How do you encourage the state to get more engaged in
yes.
your sport?
Yes.
Was that the question?
Yes.
Again, I'm going to go back to some subtleties here. If you think about what's most important to all of us as parents, it is about child safety. Now, if you can somehow educate your political leaders that putting the right amounts of, pools, whether they're outdoor or indoor facilities in there, and use safety as your leader, you'll ultimately get more people. I believe you'll get more people into it. For those that live near coastlines, putting somebody out in the water without the right swimming lessons is, to me, it's insane. But that goes on all the time. If you think about the overall welfare of the citizenry, I think you've got to start looking at safety and wellness as potential links there. It may not be the answer you want, but you ultimately have to get to a larger statement for a politician to put money into one sport or another, or one facility or another. I'm not sure if that answered the question. And I'll
There were 2 points that I think we've just been discussing. One was about a single medal going to a team sport. And I know from the USOC's point of view that when a team medals, and if you've got 15 players in a team, they see it as 15 medals in many ways, because what they do is take each athlete back to wherever they've come from, and they create superstars out of these guys back in their towns where they came from. I think there's huge power from team sports. It might not show on the medal table in that way, but it certainly has a huge impact for sport, particularly in that particular sport, as long as you can go back and celebrate your stars. It's very important.
We have the next question, front row here. Yep.
Erik van Heiningen, the Netherlands. A question for Nigel Melville. Comparing rugby to water polo, it showed during your presentation you have been seriously thinking about values, the value of families. You have been thinking about the image of rugby, beer-drinking men as a possible bad image, and combining these values, because the strength and the speed and the controlled fighting are also positive values. And I'm wondering, how do you combine them, the value of the family, fair play, a good example, role models, with the other also intriguing values?
Great question. To start with, I think rugby has a thing called the spirit of the game. It's about our values. It's about what we're all about where we've come from. It's interesting in America because we're competing against some pretty big fish, as you saw today. But they do have challenges. Professional sport has challenges. And I think the youth of today are really important to us, to bring our youth up in a way we feel strongly that they should be brought up, with family and all these kind of things. The interesting thing that we've had was, how do we change the picture? We call it the picture. The picture is mum's and dad's view of a sport. So when a little girl whose boy comes home and says, "Mum, we've been playing rugby today," there's a picture in mum's and dad's head of their perception of that game. So they would say, well, it was at college I saw rugby, and it was badly behaved, and it wasn't a very serious sport. It was non-athletic. It wasn't very skillful. There was drinking. It was partying. That's the picture they've got of your sport. So we've had to change that picture. So when little girl and boy comes home and says, "Mum, I want to play rugby," mum goes with them to practice, or dad goes with them to practice. Then they see the girl or the boy pick up the ball and run with it. They see them attack and defend. They see them in teams. They see them have respect for the referees. They see these things that they never connected with the game of rugby. And the picture changes. So we're changing that picture with a new generation of kids, because what's gone before has gone before. We probably can't change it, but we can change the generation coming through of what sport means to them, what rugby means to them. Does that answer it? Yeah. So really, our values are very important, and we see family, and we see commitment, athleticism, and healthy lifestyles at the center of everything we're doing.
Very interesting. And you can think about, which kind of picture do people see when they see water polo? What is it kind of impression they first get to them without knowing the sport as well as all you do? What do they think, and how can you maybe manage that? We are running out of time, but we have one more from the tweet, a question from, it's for Disney, they say. Your brand is famous. In reaction to your presentation, what do you mean by holistic experience for fans? Okay. And what would you recommend for water polo? Now we're coming back to your one thing you would overmanage.
Overmanage. So again, when we talk about the holistic experience, today today what a holistic experience means, the first time the customer sees your brand, whether that's in an advertising or in your social media. So is your website dynamic? Is your website, is it platform-based? Do you have it on the iPhone? Do you have it on your tablets? That's where the experience is. And if you think about the millennials, both either the millennials or Gen Y, that's the growth of your sport there. It's not for all of us that are in this room. It's for the next generation that's coming up. You've got to get them experience here. And the way they view this world is different than the way we do it. How many of us have been looking at our iPhones or our smartphones today, checking emails, everything else? Take the millennials, multiply that times 10. You've got to make it a relevant experience. So that starts from the moment they go online, to the engagement at the pool, to the engagement at the event, to the day, when they walk out of the parking lot. So that's what I meant by holistic experience there. When I think about over-managing a water polo event, and again, my experience, I saw the games in Sydney. I got a chance to watch water polo there. It was dynamic, it was exciting as all get out. But the reality is everybody that was in the stands kind of already understood the game. And I think the hard part for you is to take that television broadcast and make it translatable to somebody that goes on. I was watching the Olympics this past go-around. I didn't think there was so many whistles possible in a sporting event. And so I was, as a person who doesn't understand the rules, I didn't know what it was for. At some point, I'll turn off and I'll go to something else. I might go to my cell phone to get that next answer. You've got to figure out how to translate your product into a way that I can consume it, and you really have to you have to really dumb it down. Because the reality is we have too many options today on cable TV to quickly, or satellite, to quickly switch off. You don't want, if you get them hooked in there, you got to keep them in there. The last thing I would overmanage inside the arena is I would make sure somehow, some way, your platform, whatever's going on inside the pool, is being translated. And we talked about that earlier today on the first panel. How are they taking that experience? Because I want to see every highlight on my smartphone. If you're not doing that, you're going to lose the millennials and the Gen Ys.
I think that's a great way to end up, to finish this panel. Thanks for some really good insights and hopefully some inspiration for all of you. So I guess you will also be available during the lunch break, which we will have now. And but I think before we break for lunch, we would have the FINA president, Dr. Maglione, to hand over a little appreciation to the panelists. And then we will be back in here at 2 o'clock after lunch. Thank you. President.